And a great pleasure to welcome to our book talk segment. I've been looking forward to talking to this man. He's written a great book along with Lon Davis about the Rat Pack, more specifically Joey Bishop, who was part of the Rat Pack, and it's called Deconstructing the Rat Pack, Joey, the Mob, and the Summit. As we're coming up, I guess we're already in the 60th anniversary of kind of the birth of the Rat Pack. Of course, talking about Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop out in Las Vegas, where they really put that town even more on the map than it was. And we're joined today by Richard A. Lertzman, who is also here in Florida, not too far away from us. And he joined us to talk about the book for a few minutes, tell some stories about the Rat Pack. And Richard, great to talk with you. How are you?
Great to talk to you, Doug. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, I just talking to you before we went on there that I saw you do an interview with a mutual friend, but I also, before that, saw a blurb on online about it, and I tweeted you, so I'm glad we could connect tonight to talk about the book. I've always been a fan of that era, a little bit before my time, but I've been able to become pretty good friends with Dean Martin's daughter, Dina. She's been with us many times, so it's always great to talk about the Rat Pack.
Yeah, Dina's a friend of mine, and I'm doing a show with Dina coming up in a couple of weeks.
Oh, great! Yeah, she's a wonderful person. She and her husband are doing, I guess, a Friday afternoon show. They've been doing it every week since the pandemic hit, so they're getting a lot of publicity from that. Since you can't go on the road, I guess.
Yeah, her and John are just great people.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your interest in it. I know you've written other books. I should mention, kind of dealing with showbiz people. You wrote a book about Mickey Rooney and about Peter Falk and Dr. Feelgood, who was kind of an infamous doctor among showbiz folks. So you've always had an interest in show business, haven't you?
Yeah, I went to film school, and I love the era. I love the Rat Pack era, and I've always been fascinated with a lot of the people involved in the comics and people involved. And along the way, because of my family in Cleveland, I got to know a lot of the mobsters who came from Cleveland and went out to Las Vegas and took their money out with them and opened up a lot of the big hotels. It's been like Mo Dalitz and Max Diamond and Carl Cohn. So it's a fascinating mix of how the mob, most of these great performers had to work in mob clubs, and they dealt with the mob. Doesn't mean they were in the mob, but Frank and Dean and Sammy and Joey had to deal with these guys as performers.
I don't know if you saw it, not too long before she passed away, Rosemarie, a great documentary on her life. And, of course, she started out as a child, and I believe she worked for Al Capone at one time. So I don't know if you saw that, but it was a great kind of similar to what the Rat Pack did.
I did. I knew Rosie, and Rosie actually worked in Las Vegas at the opening of the Flamingo Hotel.
Right.
And she insulted Benny Siegel, Bugsy Siegel, at that opening. Then became friends, and she was the fair-haired girl of a lot of the mob clubs because of her dad and their connections.
Yeah, it's just interesting to kind of look at the history of not only show business but Las Vegas. I mean, whatever you think of the mob, they gave us a great place to go visit. Even though they may not be there anymore.
Yeah. Well, they used to be nice.
That's
Hopefully
right.
in the future we can go back there. But, it's fascinating because, Frank owned 9% of the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. And Mo Dalitz and Money from the East, guys like Frank Costello and Meyer Lansky, they all had invested in Las Vegas. And they knew that the number one attraction to draw them in would be Frank Sinatra. He was the magnet. So when they opened up in 58, they gave Frank 9% of the hotel. And Frank used to go down to these great shows. I don't know if you remember. He was a great band leader and conductor and composer. His name was Louis Prima.
Oh, sure.
And Louis and his wife, Keely Smith, and a guy named Sam Butera, who was the sax player, had this like freewheeling act where the band would joke around and they'd be crazy. And Frank would come down and go to the Sahara Lounge where they appeared. I would watch Prima and his wife and watch this loose act, and he just loved it. And he always envisioned getting his buddies together and doing a loose act like Prima did. So this guy named Al Freeman was this brilliant publicist he had worked for Frank Sinatra for his publicist in the past, and they lured him to Las Vegas. And Freeman, the idea of the guys, the mob, is they had thrown tons of money to build these great resorts, but they were only drawing people from Los Angeles. And they wanted to get people from Chicago and New York and St. Louis and Miami and all over. They wanted them to fly to Las Vegas and make it a destination spot. And they came to Frank and they said, Frank, what if you got your buddies together and we did this monumental event and we lured everybody in? So Frank loved the idea. And he told them about Louis Prima. And so he put together, he had just worked with Dean Martin. And Dean had, broke up with Jerry, and now he did a film called Some Come Running. And Dean, he wanted to work with Dean. Sammy Davis Jr. just had a car accident and had lost an eye.
Right.
And Frank really nursed him back to health. And Sammy was a favorite in Las Vegas, although it was very, very polarized. It was very racist in those days. So he wanted Sammy to be a part of it. And then, he had been on the outs with a guy named Peter Lawford. Peter was in films at MGM the same time Frank was. And Peter became friends with Frank, but Peter started gossiping to Ava Gardner about Frank's exploits and almost broke up their relationship. So he almost killed Peter Falk and didn't talk to him for years. But when Peter got married to Patricia Kennedy, Frank became fascinated with that. Peter showed him a script he was shopping around called Ocean's 11. And Frank loved it. It was a Vegas heist film. It was right up Frank's alley. So Frank went to Jack Warner. Jack Warner said, great, let's do the film. And Frank brought it to the guys in Vegas and said, what if we shot this on location, use the sands as the center of it, but, you can't cut out the other mob guys. So all the hotels had to be involved because you don't step on toes in Las Vegas. So he said, let's get them all involved. So what they did was, during the day, they brought in Louis Milestone, who was a great director. They shot Ocean's 11 during the day, and at night, they did 2 shows every night for 28 straight nights. At 8 and at 12, they did a show. And every night they featured, one night they featured Dean, one night it was Sammy, one night was Frank. You couldn't feature Peter because Peter didn't do that much. And Joey was kind of the straight man of the group.
There he is, folks. Welcome to the Sons of Italy banquet. How about the good the Mafia does? Fine organization.
Can I ask you a question? Yes. You got a present for me?
I'll get you a pimple.
Hey, I just saw an empty table. Let's have a meeting with Mr. Entrada. Right over there, look at that. There's a table empty.
Oh, that's my following.
Can I ask you guys a question?
No.
Now that he's off the stage, this is his night. According to our schedule, this is his night, right?
Right, Frank. Whatever
He's
you
supposed
say,
to do
you
this.
son of a gun.
Wait a minute. Hold it there, chicky baby.
You want to meet early tomorrow? We'll look for furniture.
Now,
Fight.
Be serious.
I want to thank the B'nai B'rith for this trophy.
Be serious,
All right.
will you please?
Hear this.
How come that I am on the stage? I have to work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right?
Peter is Sammy's partner. You want to discuss it? Get in there, Peter. Say something British.
Something British. You guys were supposed to be working tonight. I don't know what I'm doing out here. And on top of that, I feel there's something... Shut your mouth, you'll get a rough in your blood.
A lot of you think he's not humble.
Now listen. Now wait a minute. I'm not complaining about being out here if it was his night tonight. But at least look, I'm regular. I put on a tuxedo, right? Right. I say if you look dead, dress dead. Well, as long as I'm here, I'd like to say a few words about Senator Kennedy.
That's right, Frank. If he gets in, you'll be ambassador to Italy.
I just want to be in charge of the wax. Excuse me, I got it's a cat.
If anybody should know.
Easy with the noise, easy. I love Vegas in the springtime. I love Vegas in the fall. I love Vegas in the winter when it drizzles. I love Vegas in the summer when it sizzles. I love Vegas every moment. Every moment of the year. I love Vegas, but I love Vegas because Entrada's here. Possible. And when you hear it thunder, don't you run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me.
So it really featured them, and you could get a ticket. $7 a ticket, and you got dinner, but you couldn't get a ticket. The Sands had 270 rooms. They sold 35,000 rooms, and just when they announced this, and people converged from everywhere. I mean, everybody. It was the place to be seen, to be there. Everybody wanted to be a part of this event. And it was the mega event of that era. And the talent of Frank Sinatra was so amazing. And Dean Martin was so cool, such a great voice and such a talent. And Sammy Davis Jr. could do it all. He could sing, dance, he did impersonations. He was great on stage. And then they brought, Frank had an opening act, and that was Joey Bishop. And it was Joey's good fortune he was the opening act for Frank at that time. So he lucked out, and he came the straight man to the group and roll on the bar on the stage and all drink. And Peter, they found something for Peter to do. You know, well, one time Peter rejected a line that Joey had given him, and so Joey went to Frank, and Frank said, "Peter, you say the line, you say what Joey wrote you, or you don't say anything at all. You're not in the act then." So it really combined for this incredible event for 28 straight days, here's guys. But you know, the truth is, you know, there's a myth, which is that these guys were out partying and womanizing and having all kind of trysts with women and drinking, but they were in their mid-40s, and the fact is that Dean came to Las Vegas with Jeannie, his wife. Mm-hmm. Frank had Sammy had Mae Britt, who was about to get married too. Joey had Sylvia, his wife, and Patricia Kennedy was there with Peter. So it really, you know, in fact, these were very disciplined performers. And, you know, someone just recently told me, I did an interview with someone who they went to the shows, and they said they went to an 8 o'clock show and they went to a 12 o'clock show, and the shows were almost identical. Mm. So as improv as it looked, it was very structured, and it was loose by look, but in fact, it was very structured, and they knew exactly where they were going to go.
Yeah,
But these guys were so great that they could pull it off.
I wish I was around that era. There is some film you can see on YouTube. Actually, somebody must have had a camera in the back of the showroom, because there's about 3 or 4 video. You've probably seen them, I'm sure, of most of their act. So at least you get to see what it was like a little bit, you know.
Yeah, you see that. There's a later in '65 they did a charity event for the
St. Louis one,
house
yeah,
in
right.
St. Louis. Yeah, that had Johnny Carson. By that time, Joey was out of it, and Peter was out.
Yeah, I want to
it,
get to that in a little bit. He was on the outs, but there's some film of actually them at the Sands. I guess a couple of different performances, and you really get an idea of it. The sound isn't that great, and it's a little fuzzy, but you do get an idea of what it was like.
Yeah, and well, you'd love to be a part of it, because it just looks like it was electric, like it was just such a great atmosphere. And here it is, it's 60 years later, and we're still talking about the Rat Pack.
Yeah.
And it really only lasted, it really was that year. That was the year of the
That was
Rat
about
Pack.
it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. So, and we're still talking about it 60 years later.
Well, let's talk, and again, your book, Deconstructing the Rat Pack, Joey, the Mob, and the Summit focuses on Joey Bishop, a comedian. Now, my first exposure to Joey Bishop, I was a kid. I guess the first time I got to stay up late on the weekend, or Friday night, and watch The Tonight Show. I remember he used to be the guest host at that time, and that's my first exposure to watching Joey on TV. And then since then, you go back and see some of the sitcom he did. We can talk about that as well, but he was kind of a professional fill-in host for Johnny for a long time.
Yeah, he started out, he filled in for Jack Parr, and then he followed that Tonight Show with Johnny, and Johnny liked him because he kept his ratings up. He filled in perfectly. He didn't challenge Johnny in any way, and he was, he had a lot of good writers, but he was, in truth, he was more of a journeyman comic. He wasn't Jack Benny. He wasn't George Burns. He wasn't Don Rickles. He was a journeyman comic who fell into the right place because he was a mob comic. He worked 25 years for the mob in all their clubs all throughout the country, and they paired him up with Frank in the early 50s, and he stayed with him for about 10 years. And he was great because Frank didn't want a Don Rickles or a Shecky Green or a Buddy Hackett or one of those guys.
They blow up the room too much. Yeah, you don't want somebody to blow up the room. Yeah.
Yeah, they sucked the air out, and he just wanted someone to get it warmed up for him and to come out. And Joey did that. Joey didn't offend anybody. His humor wasn't blue, and it's exactly what Frank wanted. Like, he later had Pat Henry, and he had other comedians like that.
Did you ever get a chance to see Joey's act anywhere? Or there's not much available on YouTube. It was like a full act, maybe 10, 15, even half hour. Is there anything out there, or have you seen it?
I've seen it, and I got to know Joey for about 20 years.
Yeah.
It's Joey's act is more of a storytelling. He did some crowd play. He went out in the audience and talked to people, and he could joke around. He was witty in that way, but nothing exceptional. Nothing you're gonna go back and you're gonna remember something that like Rickles would insult someone, or Buddy Hackett gave some great off-color stories, but Joey was in that realm. But I got to know Joey for about 20 years, and I heard a lot of great Rat Pack stories from him, and to Joey, the crowning achievement of his career was being the MC at the presidential inaugural in 1961, when John Kennedy was inaugurated, and that was the high point for Joey.
Yeah, again, the little bit I saw him as a kid, and then later on, I always thought he was okay. The sitcom, he was more like a Jack Benny type, didn't really get the laughs. He was kind of the straight man, but again, you wouldn't say he didn't put you on the floor laughing. He was kind of semi-amusing. Is that fair to say?
They call him the Frown Prince of comedy.
Right, that was a great line you had in your book. Yeah, I had not heard that one before.
And he's just very stone-faced. When he hit it big with the Rat Pack, they looked for something on television. So there's a great writing and comedy and production team of Sheldon Lennon and Danny Thomas. They did the Danny Thomas Show and the Andy Griffith Show and Dick Van Dyke and I Spy and all these other great shows. And they came up with a concept for Joey. And the first concept had Joey as a publicist, and it had Warren Berlinger as his brother, and Marlo Thomas, who was Danny's daughter, obviously, played his sister, and it was awful. It was a horrible concept.
I saw a couple of them. You can watch them on one of the Roku channels or something. I found it. Yeah, a little rough.
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime, or you can watch it on MeTV if you get MeTV.
Right.
It's a really rough show. And Warren Berlinger, I interviewed him, and he just passed away last week.
I saw that the other day. I always liked him. He's kind of one of those actors, you see the face, and you maybe not quite sure who he was. I knew the name. But, yeah, good guy, good actor.
Yeah, good actor, and the nephew of Milton Berle.
Right. Yeah.
And Warren, I called him up, and I said, Warren, he said, why would you talk about that? And he went into
I know in the book he didn't like talking about it.
No, it was like a rough period because Joey was just awful. And Joey had great writers. They brought in the best of the best writers. And one of them was a guy named Milt Josephsberg.
Oh, sure.
Milt wrote years and years for Jack Benny. And writing for Jack Benny was a pleasure because Jack appreciated his writers. He treated them well. And it paid off because Jack was such a great comic. So when he went to work for Joey, and he went to work with Sheldon Leonard, one show that Milt wrote was Joey had a twin brother, had a twin cousin, and Joey's getting angrier and angrier through the week. So Joey and Milt's this little diminutive guy, quiet, scholarly, and Joey grabs him and starts shaking him, and he goes, "Why did you write my twin cousin to be funnier than I am?" Everybody thought, still, Bill could explain it to Joey, and I talked to Gary Marshall, who started his, he began his career on the Joey Bishop show.
Yeah.
And he just, he said he stuck with it because it was like a master's course. And if you get through this, you're gonna succeed. And Gary Marshall did.
Ready, girls? 1, 2.
Ziggity boom, rah, rah, ziggity boom, row, row. Welcome to the Joey Bishop Show.
The Joey Bishop Show. Starring Joey Bishop. Also starring Abby Dalton with Corbett Monica, Joe Besser, Mary Treen, and Joey's guest star tonight, Bobby Rydell.
I'd heard stories, and you listen to different shows. I don't know if you've been on the Gilbert Gottfried podcast. If not, I'm sure they're going to call you. But they do a lot of showbiz stories, and Joey Bishop's name always comes up as one of the guys nobody really liked working with. And you talk about it in the book.
Yeah, we're going to be at Gilbert in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But Joey is a guy that just he burned every bridge you could imagine.
Really terrible. It wasn't just like, Milton Berle could be difficult, but he wasn't a bad guy. This guy comes across really rotten at times.
Every time I talked to, I had a friend named Rocky Kalish, and his name was Austin Kalish. His nickname was Rocky. And he was one of the co-creators of Gilligan's Island.
Oh, sure.
And he wrote everything, All in the Family, and every show. And the minute Joey died, I was getting joke emails from Rocky Kalish, who was then in his late 80s, of how much he hated Joey Bishop. I mean, I talked to Sheldon Leonard, who could, Sheldon produced the show, and I said, Sheldon, why, I'd like to meet Joey Bishop, because what would you want to meet that Meshuggah? And so, it's like a crazy man.
Yeah.
And so, it just, Joey burned every bridge in his way, including Frank Sinatra along the way.
Let's talk about that, because you mentioned before he was not on that St. Louis show, the one that most people have probably seen now on YouTube, but Johnny Carson filled in. What was the actual story there?
Well, Joey, Frank did everything for Joey. He got him into the Rat Pack. He opened up the doors for for Joey. Joey was in Ocean's 11. Then Joey got a little bigger part in Sergeant's 3. So he called up Joey to appear at the, Frank owned a piece of the Cal Neva Hotel in Reno, Tahoe. He owned it with Sam Momo Giancana. And he was supposed to appear in a weekend. He said, Joey, I need you to fill in for me. And when Frank asked, you do it. I mean, the guy...
He wasn't asking you. He was telling you.
Yeah, he's telling you. Someone told me once, if you have Frank Sinatra as a friend, you don't need another friend.
That's it.
I mean, that's how he was good to the people, and they were nice to him, but he expected the same out of you. So Joey said, I need a private plane. I need $50,000. And he gave him a list of all these things, and Frank hung up on him. And that was it.
Okay.
Joey, in 1963, Joey was supposed to do Robin and the Seven Hoods, and he was supposed to play Guy Gizmore, and they got Peter Falk to replace him, and Joey was out. And no matter what Joey did to Frank to try to get back in, and he would try to cable him or call him, and Frank just really wanted no part of him.
Yeah. Now, there is another clip on YouTube where they must have put it up recently, or maybe 6 months ago, 1965. I guess he was filling in for Johnny, and Dean and Frank come on. So I guess for that particular one night, Frank forgave Joey, huh? Do you know what happened there?
Yeah, I saw that. It's a great clip, and
it's a long one. It's about a half an hour, 40 minutes of those two guys on the panel.
I think Dean dragged them out, and I don't think Dean was. Dean had used Joey later on.
Joey was on the Dean Martin show a lot. Yeah,
at the Dean Martin roast. But the funny thing is, when Dean Martin roasts Frank Sinatra, Sammy's there, but there's no Joey to be seen.
Right.
So I know that Joey had cabled Frank. For Frank had one time was doing a film in Hawaii and nearly drowned, and Joey cabled him. He goes, Frank, I thought you could walk on water. And Frank thought that was funny, but there was still like a distance between Frank and Joey. Like the same thing, Frank broke off with Peter Lawford when Peter Lawford didn't deliver his brother-in-law to his Palm Springs house. That was the end of Peter Lawford. So
that was true that Frank built like the helicopter pad and everything, and the Kennedy said no, we're going to go to Bing Crosby's house. That actually was the true story.
Yeah. Well, Frank had planned for the president to come out. It was a big thing for Frank, and so Frank built this helicopter pad. He built rooms to accommodate the Secret Service and to accommodate meetings, and he really built on to his Palm Springs house. So when Joe Kennedy, the president's father, found out about it, he goes, not going to him. He's associated with Momo Giancana and all. You're president of the United States now. You can't do that. And so they left. He called Peter Lawford, and he left the job up to Peter Lawford to tell Frank. And Peter knew what was going to happen. So Peter called up Frank, and Frank goes, the next thing you hear, and you're going to slam. And that was the end of Peter Lawford. And Frank actually got mallets and started knocking down walls.
Wow.
He had a massive tantrum, and he started knocking down all this construction that was going on. It's really, but the fact is, Joe Kennedy used the Rat Pack to get his son elected to be president of the United States. Back in that 28-day period, he wanted John Kennedy to be seen with the Rat Pack. He wanted to seem cool and hip and young. He wanted him to be the opposite of Richard Nixon, the stodgy guy. Even though Richard Nixon and John Kennedy were nearly the same age, he wanted to seem totally different.
Yeah.
And Joe Kennedy was this master publicist. He knew what to do and how to sell it. So he had John fly in for 3 days, and from the audience, John was interested. John was there for 2 shows a night, and John was introduced, the next president. They did a whole thing, and the news cameras were there. And then also another thing is that Joe Kennedy called up his old bootlegging buddies, and he said, if you want protection in the White House, we'll give it to you. If you're worried about, us coming, the government coming down the neck of Las Vegas, support John, and we'll watch out for you. So he had all these guys, which was not the greatest idea, but he had Momo Giancana and Frank Costello and Meyer Lansky, and everybody give $1 million, and they put it in a satchel, and John Kennedy carried it out of there. And Peter Lawford and Sammy Davis Jr. actually looked and saw the money, and they carried it out. And what eventually happened was that Joe Kennedy had a stroke,
right,
and Bobby Kennedy went after all the mobsters, which, there's all the conspiracy theories of, it angered them.
Yeah, that's a whole nother book right there. What that was all about. But
yeah.
Again, going back to those film clips, there is one with JFK at the table with Milton Berle, I think, is at the table, and a couple other people, and they announce Kennedy. I think Frank says, "I'll see you in the White House real soon," something like that. So
yeah, and Frank was they were on the trail. Dean was more like, I don't want to get involved.
Dean didn't want any part of that, from what I understand.
No, Dean, they dragged him out in Los Angeles, but he never went to the inauguration. He really wanted. Dean didn't care about politics. He wanted to be out on the golf course.
Yeah.
He didn't want to get involved in either direction because he just didn't care about politics. And you couldn't buy Dean. You just could not. No one could buy Dean. Dean did whatever he wanted to do. And Dean was the ultimate and cool. And you talk to Dina, and Dina will tell you that on stage, Dean was drinking apple juice.
Right.
Dean was disciplined. I mean, Dina tells this great story about Dean Mark Smith. He has this party at his house in Beverly Hills, and Jeannie's throwing this gigantic party, and Dean, at 8 o'clock, checks out of the party, goes upstairs, gets into his pajamas, and turns on, he loves to watch Westerns. And he's watching Westerns, and he hears all this noise coming from downstairs, and he's really irritated. So he calls up the Beverly Hills police, and he reports his own party.
Yeah.
And they get raided. Meanwhile, he's watching Westerns, and he has his own party raided.
Talking with Richard A. Lertzman. Again, the name of the book is Deconstructing the Rat Pack, Joey, the Mob, and the Summer. We'll just touch on a couple other things because we want people to read the book. But Joey Bishop, again, had his own talk show, kind of going before, where we talked about he was a guest host for Johnny, but he had a talk show. Of course, Regis Philbin was his Ed McMahon for about 2 years. Now, there's some clips of that, not much. I didn't really find too much to watch of that. I'd heard about it. Did not do well, obviously, in the ratings, but that was kind of the end of his real exposure. I guess he did some guest TV shots after that, like you talked about, with some game shows and occasionally on the Dean Martin Roast, but that was kind of the end for him, wasn't it, as far as regular television?
It was. He lasted about nearly 3 years on the talk show. It did okay, but it wasn't like the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
We interviewed Regis Philbin, and this was one of Regis's first big national plays. And, Regis wasn't, off the record, he wasn't a big fan of Joey. He didn't want to go on the record. He just had a few words.
I never heard him rip Joey in any interview, so he was always kind of classy about that. But off camera or off mic, he didn't like him, huh?
Yeah, off camera, and he promised me, and I talked to him just about the year before he died. And, he had told a friend of mine, Bobby Slayton, who played Joey Bishop in the Rat Pack movie. So Bobby Slayton said, he told Regis, he goes, give me one word about Joey. He said, what? Regis said, one word. Okay, evil.
Yeah, I saw that.
and that was it. I mean, but Regis was a classy guy and didn't want to look like he's going to bite the hand that fed him.
Boy, the things I do for that little Jewish kid. I get the funniest feeling I should be walking on hot coals. I don't know why. Howdy, John.
Hi, Joey.
May I have a nice round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Johnny Man and his merry men. Sammy was on the show Tuesday, and he said, I'll be back Friday if you'll wear a jacket that I'll have made for you. I think the guy did a nice job in 2 days, don't you? Oh, I just found out that here in California, we are number one in 2 more areas. We have more supermarket carts stolen than any other state, and we have more elderly ladies than any other state. So you little old ladies, you gotta stop swiping them carts. Is that clear? You do have pep, John. You really do. I watch you during rehearsal. You are absolutely magnificent. I mean that sincerely. You're so full of life. Effervescent, always bubbly. To him, the flight of the bumblebee is a ballad. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like you to meet another hippie. Are you all set? Regis Philbin. Unbutton the top.
I haven't buttoned so many buttons since I was a kid.
Yeah. No
Are you getting it okay?
And then unbutton the bottom one, and you're all set.
Yeah, but yours is class. I mean, yours was made to
We
fit.
didn't have time. I wish we'd have had time, really.
We walked up Vine Street the other day,
Right.
and it came to him just like that. You gotta have a jacket, too. So we went in one of those mod shops, and it was like a father picking out an Easter Day suit for his son. I had to try everything on. It had to be just my right color, right? So here I
I think it looks very handsome.
See?
on you.
Pretty flowers? No flowers for you.
Go buy a kid a gift.
No, I appreciate it. Really, it's pretty smart. I feel
think
kind of
so.
slick.
The beads look great.
The what?
The
Oh, the
beads.
beads. Yeah.
The what? You're wearing 2 things. What else could it be? Yes,
Do you feel any different?
it is. It is a good feeling. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah.
I don't know if I wore it over and over, but
Yeah.
to wear it for a change, it's not bad.
Is that the new shirt you bought too?
It's a shirt with a stand-up collar like
he's
Sammy
coming.
has.
He's coming over here. We should have got him one.
I couldn't let this go.
Oh.
It's nothing stupendous, but I just have to say that you fellas look darling.
The only thing I hate is a guy with a short jacket and a big mouth.
I do feel a little funny now that he said it.
So do I. Let's get Sammy out here fast. Then we'll feel normal.
That's right. Well, as everybody knows,
Yes.
and I guess we've had the biggest ticket order we've had in the history of the show for tonight's performance, right?
I think so.
Everybody's been after tickets. So he's here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Sammy Davis Jr. Good. Yeah. He brought,
His co-star from the picture.
That's right.
Salt and Pepper.
yes, another old
Right.
pal of yours, Peter Lawford is
Peter
here.
Lawford.
Yes.
Who else?
Let's see. Oh, Dean, one of Dean's pretty young daughters is here.
Dina?
Dina Martin. Yes, and she is a pretty little girl, isn't she?
Adorable.
All right.
So far, it's a real hip show.
Hey, I want to tell you, I feel like we're just at the right time, too.
You know, we can leave here and go right to the ranch market and not be suspicious. We get those gallons of wine they're selling for 89 cents a gallon.
We do that already.
I want to tell you one thing.
What?
If during the course of wearing that coat, you top me once more, the coat goes back. Is that clear?
Oh, and Sammy brought
Yes.
his protege, a fine
Well,
singer.
I just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
He is Sammy's protege, and if tonight he does good, he automatically becomes Frank's protege.
Move from the ladder.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Bob Silver is here,
Bob
ladies
Silver,
and gentlemen.
okay.
Yes. That's it.
You're a very handsome kid. You do.
I don't like the way these flap out. See, yours
So
don't
you don't have to
flap.
worry about that.
Look
You
like I'm
just
on a
get caught in the
parachute.
rain one day, it'll be a nice normal jacket again. $8 I paid for that. And I got a baseball bat and sneakers. What do you want to do now?
Flaps out like that.
It's supposed to.
Yours don't flap out.
What do you mean flap out?
Well, look at this. It's not right. This is nationwide television.
Well, yours is perfect, see?
Turn around. Let me see yours. Oh, yours is short.
Well, yours is great, too.
You got a vent down the middle, but mine.
Well, turn
flaps out.
around. See, yours is in case you get angry, you say, I don't need your job. That's all. That's all. That's all.
I didn't know that.
Can we do this while we're still on? We'll be right back after this word from our good friends at claro.
He means it, folks.
Yes, I do.
Yes, he does.
Yes, what is it?
But Joey went at the end of the talk show. You know, he did some Las Vegas, but he wasn't a headliner. Joey's an opening act, and Joey was now pushed as a headliner, and no one wanted Joey as a headliner. So that dried up for him. He did the match game. He did some Hollywood Squares.
Right.
But for the next 40 years, he became very obscure. He had money. He had Ed Hookstrand, who was one of Johnny's.
He invested well. I was surprised reading your book how well somebody invested for him, but he really did well, huh?
He ended up with, his estate was over $10 million. Yeah. He lived in an okay condo in Lido Isle up near Newport Beach. So he did okay, and he lived good, but he really was bitter at the end. And when I got to know him, he was just very bitter that everybody had forgotten him. You know, his whole thing was that he was the spoke of the wheel. He was the glue that held the Rat Pack together. And I did have a heart to say, Joey, it's Frank, Dean, and Sammy.
Yeah.
You know, you're a good straight man, but it ain't you. It's just such, you know, those three talents they're so amazing, so magnetic, and they still resonate to this day. And, you know, Sammy, there's not a lot of film besides, you know, the Rat Pack and some other stuff. But Sammy, if you saw him on stage, he was such an unbelievable talent.
Yeah.
And Dean had such a great voice and was so cool and knew how to handle an audience. And he was great on stage. And Frank was in a league of his own.
Always a pleasure now, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to introduce Mr. Joey Bishop. Joey was a little late getting here. He was in Johnny Carson's garage loosening Johnny's brakes. One of my favorite comedians, Mr. Joey Bishop.
When they asked me to appear on the dais for Don Rickles, I said, I don't know what to say about Don Rickles. And they said, say whatever you want to say. Okay, Don Rickles is a bedwetter. Not only the bed, everywhere. He's the only one on the dais with a rubber tuxedo. I really, in my heart, I must say, I cannot believe we're paying tribute to him. I mean it. I mean, we've had big names here. Then we go to him. Or who we honoring next week? Prickly Heat? It's ridiculous. I don't believe this. You're gonna honor somebody. I don't know, a man like Dr. Jonas Saul. A man who helps fight diseases. Why are we honoring a carrier? And he's known for his hostility. And I ask you from the bottom of my heart, what has he to be hostile about? What can a short, paunchy, bald, old, ugly person possibly have to be hostile about? Should be happy-go-lucky, you devil. Does have a great sense of humor. I mean, not on stage. I'm talking about practical jokers, number one. You remember the time you took the safety belt off of Mickey Rooney's toilet seat? Remember that? Mickey almost drowned? Then I found out, and this was the shocker, because I know you don't gamble in Vegas, you don't go to the track. I found out you're a bingo addict. I called your wife, Barbara. I said, Barbara, what is Don really like? And she said, every night, bingo. I'm sure you all know why we are here, because we love this gentleman. Don Rickles is a fine person, a great entertainer, a wonderful father, and a great husband. In spite of what he says on stage, I know in my heart that he's really a good egg, and you all know where eggs come from.
Did you get the sense, and it's from reading the book, like you said, I think bitter is the good word that you just used. Did he have any side of him that was kind of a soft side that you could find? I mean, he couldn't have been all bad, right? I mean, or was he?
No, he was an interesting guy. He could come back very quick on stories. He had like a very sardonic and sense of humor.
Yeah.
He was a seasoned comic. He knew what he was doing. You know, which surprised us was that he had kicked around for 25 years before he got to the Rat Pack. And when he got to the Rat Pack, you'd think he'd be more appreciative of how hard it was to get there.
Mm.
And his head got very swelled very quickly. And he thought, you know, we interviewed Abby Dalton for the book. And
great story in there about, right.
And she passed away just last week.
Oh, she did? Nice I didn't see that. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, she passed away, and it was so nice that her daughter, Catherine Kinmont, included our book in her obituary.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time with Abby, and Abby said they wanted to turn her into the next Mary Tyler Moore. Because when they did the Joey Bishop show, the big show for Sheldon Leonard and Danny Thomas was Dick Van Dyke.
Right.
So they said, go over and watch the Dick Van Dyke show. We want you to try to be like Mary Tyler Moore to Joey Bishop. And she came back to Sheldon Leonard. She said, Sheldon, I'll tell you one thing, you know, Dick Van Dyke's great, Mary Tyler Moore is great, but I can't be Mary Tyler Moore to Joey Bishop because Joey Bishop can't sing, he can't dance, and he's not Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah, there was no sexual chemistry between the two of those characters.
She said they gave her lines. Yeah, they gave her lines like "Yes, dear," "No, dear." Joey kind of sucked the lines out, and he tried to, instead of being more like Jack Benny, where Jack was like the center of everything and of the jokes. Joey liked to be the funny one, and just didn't work out that way.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about it. I usually keep up with that. I did not see that she passed. I'm sorry to hear about that. But she was always a favorite. I remember her on the Hollywood Squares. The first time I ever saw her.
Yeah, she had been on Hennessy and won the Emmy, and then she did Falcon Crest for a number of years.
Right, after that. Yeah. Well, we want to give the folks a chance to obviously read the book. There's tons more stories than we just touched on with Richard tonight. But again, the name of it is Deconstructing the Rat Pack, Joey, the Mob, and the Summit. Of course, talking about Joey Bishop and Richard A. Lertzman. Of course, Lon Davis also wrote it with you. And a real pleasure talking to you. Richard, do you have a website you want to direct? I know it's on all the sites, I guess. We'll have a link as well. But do you have a website you want to direct people to?
Well, we have a site called thelifeandtimesofhollywood.com, and they can go visit that. And there's stories. And if they want to buy it, they can buy it at Barnes & Noble or Walmart or Books A Million or at Amazon. It's on all the websites. It's in book or Kindle.
Great. I know I could do hours of this, but we got to let you go because we have to go eat and sleep. But real pleasure hearing these stories. I love these stories. I mean, you could talk hours about just these four guys, even just the three guys, if you just want to do Frank, Dean, and Sammy. I mean, there's hours and hours of stories there. But what are you working on next? Another showbiz book that you can talk about?
I'm doing a book on a comprehensive biography of Jerry Lewis.
Oh, great! Looking forward to that.
So we're going down that line, and kind of fits right in with these guys. So
definitely have you back on next year. You think it'll come out?
Yeah, next year it's going to be out.
Well, definitely let me know when it does, and we'd love to have you back. There's a complicated man. I'm sure you already found that out.
Oh, it's a dark story, Doug. We need a few hours for that one.
Oh, man, yeah. Fascinating guy and sort of a semi, I guess, part of the Rat Pack. Not really, but he was friends with Frank, and, of course, he teamed with Dean for a while. But he stayed friends with Frank throughout all that, didn't he?
He was friends with Frank, and he also appeared with Sammy in Las Vegas. Right. They did an act for a long time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was friends with all of them, and even he was friends with Dean toward the end, for a lot of years.
I guess they got back together. Well, we'll talk about that when the book comes out, but we want people to get this one about the Rat Pack and Joey. And Richard, pleasure talking to you. Thanks for joining us, and we will keep in touch and talk to you soon.
Thanks, Doug.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.